Blink Twice is now playing, and if you like Get Out, then I think you are going to thoroughly enjoy this movie because I know I did, and I am a huge Get Out fan. So let's talk about this movie. Now, this will be a spoiler-free review, but as always, if you want to see what I gave this movie out of 10, head over to my shorts, TikTok, or Instagram and check out my one-take movie review on this movie. But without further ado, let's talk about Blink Twice. So this is of course Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut, and I think she did a pretty good job with this thing. Now in this we follow a tech billionaire who is played by Channing Tatum, and he invites a cocktail waitress named Frida, who is played by Naomi Ackie, to his private island for this big fun getaway. But when Frida discovers what's really going on this island, which is pretty messed up if I do say so myself, she of course fights back and looks for a way out. Starting things off with the good, and the first thing I have here is of course our two main leads, Channing Tatum and Naomi Ackie. These two had these standout performances in my opinion, and they also helped keep things enjoyable when the movie was moving kind of slow there in the first half of the film. Starting with Channing Tatum, he played the villain in this, and I gotta say it was really refreshing to see him in a role like this because we are more obviously accustomed to him playing more comedic roles like he's done in his past. But with movies like this and Fly Me to the Moon, I really hope that opens up more opportunity for him to take on more serious roles, because after seeing him in this movie and seeing what he did with his character, I think he can really exceed in taking on more serious roles in the future, and I am so here for that. But with that said, I still do think, in my opinion, that Naomi Ackie was the star of the show, and I wasn't really familiar with her going into this movie, but she's been in movies like the Whitney Houston biopic that came out in 2022. She was in Mickey 17 with Robert Pattinson, and then I just recently discovered and just, I guess, realized that she was also in Rise of Skywalker as well. So she's definitely been around the block, but this was my first experience with her in a lead role, and I think she killed it. Now, I will say her character did make some pretty dumb decisions in this movie, like going to a private island with a guy that you just met, but as far as bringing her character of Frida to life on the big screen, I think Naomi Ackie did a great job, and I hope to see her in more lead roles in the future because obviously she was the main character in this thing, and a lot of this movie was placed on her shoulders and also Channing Tatum's, but mainly her shoulders, and she carried this movie very well in my opinion. Next up for the good, I have the visuals, and this is something that definitely surprised me about this film. All the visuals in this movie were really vibrant and just visually appealing to look at. There are also a couple of moments in this film where you kind of feel like you're watching a Wes Anderson movie because some of the shots are static, super symmetrical, and they're playing some quirky music in the background as well. But Zoe Kravitz definitely has her own style and flair, and that definitely showed through the visuals in this film. It's definitely a style that I enjoyed. Not only did it remind me of some Wes Anderson films, but as I said earlier in this video, it definitely reminds me of the movie Get Out and really just reminds me of Jordan Peele's style in general. So I'd really just be curious to know if Zoe Kravitz had any inspiration behind this film and the way it turned out visually. And finally, for the good, I have the second half of this film, and the second half of this thing is a reason why I enjoy this movie so much, because it does make up a lot for the first half, which was pretty boring and slow at times, but I will get to that in just a second. The second half of this thing is really where everything started to happen and things started to get revealed and the plot finally started to move forward. I mean, this is where the action happened, the drama happened, the suspense happened, and even revealed the themes of the movie as well. It all took place in that second half of the movie. I mean, at that halfway point, this movie really turned into a film about suppressed trauma and women empowerment too, and I think they handled those themes very well towards the end of this film. And as we got to the climax of this thing, I was genuinely sitting on the edge of my seat because I truly didn't know what was going to happen. This film went from having no suspense to having nail-biting suspense, in my opinion, because you just didn't know which way this thing was gonna go. Plus, in my opinion, it kind of makes the first half of this movie better because it pays off a lot of the things that they set up in that part of the movie. Moving on to the so-so, and the only thing I have here is the ending. Now, I can't really talk about the ending without spoiling it, so I guess here's your spoiler warning. If you don't want spoilers, just go to this timestamp on the screen to skip over this minor part of the video, but Otherwise, I'm gonna be talking spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Now, when I first left this movie, I thought the ending was great and poetic in a way. And the more I think about it, I still do think the ending is poetic, but I'm kind of more mixed on it now because it kind of made our main character Frida become the new villain. We had this big redemption arc for her as she essentially escaped the control of Channing Tatum's character and became free, but then she kind of just turned around and did the same thing to him, which was just kind of weird in my opinion because that's what she was trying to get away from this whole entire movie, just to kind of revert back to that. Now, I definitely understand what they were trying to do there. Throughout this entire movie, Frida didn't want to be invisible anymore or feel invisible to everyone else. She wanted to be seen, and at the end of this movie, in that final scene, she is finally being seen by everyone, but she is also doing the same thing that Channing Tatum was doing to her by making him forget. So in that scene, when I saw that at the very end of the movie, it kind of made me start to view her as a villain as well, and I was kind of like, okay, how is she any better than Channing Tatum's character? In my opinion, I feel like she could have been painted more as a hero at the end of this movie because she essentially just became the thing that she was trying to get away from throughout this entire film. So that's kind of why I felt a little bit iffy and mixed on the ending of this film. And finally, moving on to the bad, and the only thing I have here is something that I've mentioned a couple times in this video, and that is the first half of this movie. And I think this movie's main criticism from kind of just the world in general will be that the first half of this film was kind of boring and slow, and quite honestly, I can agree with that take. There just wasn't much going on at all in the first half of this thing. The plot wasn't moving forward, and that's probably why it felt a little bit boring there as well. And also at times it felt a little bit repetitive as well. And to be honest, you really don't know what's going on or what the point of all this is that's happening in the first half of the film. Yes, they do tease some things that get paid off later in the movie, but in the moment you don't know that. So when you see it on screen, you're kind of just like, okay, what the heck does that mean? Why did they show us that? And what does this have to do with everything else that's going on? But overall, for me, I still think this is a good movie. Even though the first half was slow, I think the second half and the performances are enough to make up for it, making this a movie that I would recommend you go see. Those are my thoughts on Blink Twice. Be sure to let me know what you thought of the movie down in the comments. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, get your Eazy Apparel at shopeasyapparel.com. God bless, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.